Okay, so we're gonna dive into something pretty intense today, huh? You guys wanted to really get into HR 7909, this Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act,
Right.
and looking at the documents for this one.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it is. And the speeches.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some fiery ones to
Yeah.
unpack here.
Yeah.
I think maybe just starting, people hear this title, right? Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act.
Right.
And they immediately have a reaction,
Oh, for sure.
one way or the other.
Totally.
So I think before we even get into the arguments, let's just be super clear
Okay.
on what this bill actually does. Legally speaking,
Yes.
what changes does it make?
Because I'll be honest, I was reading through it and I'm like, am I going to need like a law degree to even understand what I'm reading here? Break it down for us.
Yeah, no, it's dense. Okay, so think of it this way. The U.S. immigration system, it's already complicated, right?
Yeah.
Like a house with a million doors.
Right.
This bill, it's like they're putting new locks on some of those doors.
Okay.
Specifically, who can even get into the house in the first place? That's inadmissibility.
Okay.
And then who can get kicked out once they're here? Deportation. And
Yeah.
all of this centered around violence against women, convictions, accusations. It gets messy.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I wanted to ask you about because, we're looking at what Representative Nadler was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically saying, like, we've already got locks on these doors. Like, what are we doing?
He is, and he's not mincing words. He calls this, straight up a messaging bill, meaning it's more about politics than actual problems.
Okay.
But, and this is important, he does point to specific parts of the law that he says already cover this ground.
Okay, so like what?
So we've got aggravated felony,
Mm-hmm.
we've got moral turpitude.
Okay.
These are already grounds for keeping people out or deporting them.
Right.
And they're broad categories. Like we're talking rape, child abuse, stuff that's already under the microscope.
So is this bill, like, trying to fix something that isn't broken? Is it redundant?
That's exactly Nadler's point. He says it's redundant, but, and this is a big but,
Okay, here we go.
the folks on the other side of this,
Yeah.
McClintock Mace, they're saying, no, this is about closing loopholes. They're talking about horrific crimes, real stories. They want to make sure nothing slips through the cracks.
Yeah, and they do tell some really, like, difficult stories. I was
Yeah.
reading about that case, the 11-year-old girl abducted, raped,
Powerful.
and Mace is like, this bill, this could prevent that. And it's hard to hear that and not think, okay, yeah, we do need to protect people. But then the question becomes, is this how we do it?
Exactly. Even if we all agree on the goal, the method is what's up for debate.
Right.
And one of the biggest sticking points, and this gets complicated, is how this bill defines domestic violence.
Oh, yeah.
They're importing this much broader definition, one that's used for funding under the Violence Against Women Act, but never meant for criminal law, Nadler says.
So why is that a problem? Explain it to me like I don't have a law degree.
Okay, so imagine you are in a situation, a domestic violence situation.
Right.
You're defending yourself.
Right.
You might still end up with the charge, right?
Right.
But currently, you can argue that. You can say, hey, it was self-defense, and you might avoid deportation.
Okay.
This new bill, way harder to do that.
Ew.
So Nadler and a lot of advocacy groups are saying, you're trying to catch bad guys, but you're going to sweep up a lot of victims in the process.
It's like they're trying to cast such a wide net
Exactly.
that they might be missing who they're actually trying to get.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Wait till we get to what Mace said about the Charleston County Sheriff, because that throws a whole other wrench in the works.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
So Mace did not hold back in these speeches.
Not at all. And it's interesting because she's speaking from personal experience too, right? She's a survivor of rape, of domestic violence. So for her, this is very much about protecting other women and girls from going through what she did.
Right.
And she brings up some really disturbing examples to prove her point.
Like that one, I think it was 25 miles from the Capitol building.
Yeah.
13-year-old girl.
Ugh, it's awful.
It's really hard to hear those stories.
It is.
And not think that something needs to be done.
Right. And I think that's something to be mindful of as we're unpacking this, right?
Okay.
Those stories are powerful, but they are individual stories.
Right.
Do they represent a larger problem
Right.
that this bill would actually address? That's what we have to figure out.
So just because something horrible happened
Mm-hmm.
and the person was here illegally, it doesn't automatically mean that this bill is the answer.
Exactly. Correlation doesn't equal causation, as they say.
Okay, I like that.
And it's not just about what the politicians are saying about this bill either. You've got like almost 180 advocacy groups focused on domestic violence.
Okay.
Who are coming out against HR 7909.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that many.
Yeah, it's a lot, and their reasoning is really important.
Okay, so what are they saying?
They're saying this bill could actually make things harder for victims who are immigrants.
Okay.
Imagine, right, you're undocumented, you're experiencing abuse.
Yeah.
It's already
hard to come forward.
Exactly. Incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Now, add on top of that, if I report this, I could be deported.
Wow. So they just stay silent.
It's a chilling effect. They might not report, they might not cooperate with law enforcement.
Right.
And these groups are saying that's going to do more harm than good.
Wow. That's complicated.
It's very complicated.
Because you're trying to balance so many things.
Yeah.
You want to protect victims, you want to prevent violence, but you also have to think about these unintended consequences.
Right, and you have to think about the people who are already here.
Yes. And their experiences, their perspectives.
Okay, so we've got this whole complicated web, and then Mace brings up the Charleston County Sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
Throws that in the mix.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, right.
Because she's basically accusing the sheriff
of what?
Of releasing dangerous criminals on purpose because of these so-called sanctuary policies.
Okay.
And she even brings up this ICE document.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as evidence.
Like, what does it say?
So she claims it shows he released over 50 people who were accused of crimes.
What kind of crimes?
Well, she specifically mentioned a suspected pedophile.
Wait, hold on a second. A suspected pedophile?
Yeah, and she does say...
Like, did she give any more details about it?
She mentions that it was actually one of her own department policies that led to this whole situation, but it wasn't really clear from the speeches we saw.
Okay.
But she basically uses this to paint the sheriff as this guy who's putting the community at risk.
Right, by not being tough enough on undocumented immigrants. Exactly. Even those accused of serious crimes.
Right.
It's a powerful narrative.
Yeah, it is. But it's only one side of the story.
That's the thing. We're only getting Mesa's side here.
Right.
We don't know what the sheriff would say.
Right. Exactly.
If he had a chance to defend himself.
Right. And what the context is for those other 50 people, too.
Exactly. Like, there's always more to the story.
Right. It's just hard when it's something like this because it feels so...
Oh, it's so charged.
Yes.
Immigration is such a hot button issue.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And, you hear those stories and you want to react, but...
But we have to take a step back.
Right.
Look at the whole picture.
A whole picture, yeah.
Even when it's messy.
Even when it's messy, that's right. It is interesting, though, how Mace brings up that case with the sheriff, right? Like that ICE document, those accusations.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how McClintock talked about those really specific stories of violence and abuse.
Totally.
It's like they're both trying to...
It's about making it real, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Make it real, make it emotional.
Because you can talk about the law, you can talk about statistics, but when you tell a story about a person...
It hits different.
It hits you in the gut. It does. And that's powerful. But it also means we have to be careful.
Okay, how so?
Because a story, even a really powerful one, doesn't necessarily represent the whole picture.
It's like they say the plural of anecdote is not data.
Exactly. One example doesn't make a trend.
Right, right.
So it brings us back to HR 7909, trying to fix a real problem, violence against women, but it's messy, Lots of other stuff comes up.
So where does that leave us then?
I think the big takeaway is that immigration law, it's complicated.
Yeah.
You try to change one thing, even for a good reason, like protecting people, there are going to be ripple effects.
Okay, yeah.
And we got to think about those.
Like, we can't just focus on what we want to happen.
Exactly. Unintended consequences, that's key.
Right. And we have to think about all the different people this could impact.
Yes. All the different perspectives.
Yeah, and what really stuck with me was this whole question of intent.
Ooh, interesting.
Like, does it matter why someone did something? Or is it just, you did it, so that's it?
Right. Like, is the act itself enough?
Just say, you're out.
Wow.
That feels huge.
It's a huge philosophical question. And honestly, this bill, it's just one example of how we're wrestling with that as a society.
It's like we opened this tiny door,
Right.
thinking it was just about this one thing. And it's like, whoa, this whole other world just opened up.
It's all connected, you know? Criminal justice, immigration, what does justice even mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
And we might not have all the answers.
Right.
But just by talking about it,
Yeah.
by getting curious, asking those tough questions, that's how we move forward.
I love that, that's what these deep dives are all about.
Totally.
Getting people to think, to stay curious.
Because knowledge is power, right? The more we know, the better choices we can make.
Love it. So everyone listening, go out there, keep learning, stay curious.
Absolutely. And we'll be back next time with another deep dive.